and to holistically hold on to.
It's got to be taught throughout the whole process. It begins at Kapuka for the soldier, obviously. The day one when you walk in, you've got your NCO, he's there, his uniform's pressed, he's looking professional and smart, he speaks well, and the output is defence, be proud. That's what my experience of Kapuka was, and I still remember it now. It was only about 10 years ago. But I asked the soldier the other day, it's like, what was your experiences from Kapuka? She's like, oh, I went through about 8 years ago. Do they still shake the heads of the recruits? She said, yes, they still do this, they still do that. I'm like, that's interesting. That's what they did for us, and that's also what they did for Kapuka, for Vietnam veterans, so 30, 40 years ago. And it's something that's obviously tried and tested, and that's where I think at the base level, and I guess for the officers when they go to RMC or Dontru, that's where they create the bedrock for the culture that they bring into the defence.
So how important do you think it is though to have those basic standards at the outset, which instill a level of understanding that this is a different framework to where a civilian may have come from?
Yeah, so obviously everyone starts out as a civilian, right? And then somehow identifies within themselves that want to join the military, so we don't have conscripts anymore. And then, so at what point do their values flip over to become these military values? And that's an age-old problem of can you actually teach ethics to an adult? Can you, the fact this person wants to volunteer probably means that they have some of them or most of them. We don't really have a choice but to teach it. But how much can you really teach someone ethics if they don't already have it in themselves? And then how do you assess it? Don't know, aside from the fact that they're actively not displaying the behaviours and just they're going on with life. And then we talk about the decisions we have to make, and you go, really, you can only test that in the real world scenario. And that's when it's too late. Or that's when maybe that lack of the ability to really test it because it's kind of impossible, really comes to the fore.
Just there's the propensity to have the ability to be acculturated. It's such an
does that even exist?
You can't judge it. Of course it exists. How else would we all get
But it does it in adults. I mean, this is like, you go back to Plato and read it, and it's like, how do we find a group of people in the society where we can give so much power to defeat our enemies who won't turn around and use it on us to subsume us?
Hey, people can join cults as adults. We can inculcate them into the army.
Yeah.
They get brainwashed by a cult.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we're a cult, although we are brainwashed.
We can edit it to look like that.
Yeah. But I would say that you can impress values on people, I think, and impress the importance of those values.
Yeah.
If anyone holds at least maybe a part of that already before they join, then increasing their understanding of why that particular value has importance can maybe help bring it out of people.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think they'll join, and that'll show them that there's a bias towards the values already that the defence holds. And so that should make it easier to align them. But the idea that the book brings out of moral fitness is one of the scalable approaches, I think. So when they join in Kapuka, they can start to be introduced to the values and the ethics and the morality behind what we do. And then as they increase their understanding of the organisation and they progress through their career and they get more experience, you can argue they become more professional. You can increase that scale of exposure to ethics and morality, and then constantly challenge them through their moral fitness ideas. And one thing the book described that it's very easy. The only way you can't test morality retrospectively. You can only preload it. Like you can't like a law can be imposed retrospectively. You can't do that with ethics.
They talk about Vietnam conscripts, right? It's a bit of an American approach, but the almost complete breakdown of some units due to drug taking, insubordination. So obviously there has to be some base level of will to start with, right? So the army as an institution, if you take that example of Vietnam, of conscripts, you can't really impress morals on someone because they'll go to a war zone and take drugs and just go jack on their mates. So it comes from a level of within yourself, right? So the army can tell you this is what we value, and if you don't want to go in that direction, maybe this is not for you. I think it's a very difficult question to answer and say, can you actually instill this in someone, especially if they don't believe it?
So I think only if they have the bias and the intrinsic values themselves.
Yeah, and so what are we teaching if they already have it?
But it's,
Or
I
just
think,
reinforcing and just saying how this fits into
Guiding them.
our world? Yeah.
I think the other part of that though is it's about a person wanting to be a professional or join a professional organisation.
Yeah.
But what they've also seen is the brand. It's like the police force, the medical profession, all those other ones, which are very similar to ours. However, our brand, and in particular how our brand is managed, is what we need people to see so that they won't keep joining us. Because if our brand is let run wild, like I just explained, Carl, it's crazy who, only a small part of society wants to be part of that. And those people we don't want or don't need. So that brand management is key to having that uppermost in people who want to join us.
Yeah.
And you see that continuously with termination of people who do not follow the values.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It's very difficult to define whether you can teach that or not. But I think it definitely needs to be enforced.
Yeah.
And in a way shoved in the face right from the outset, so you know where you stand in comparison to the organisation and the profession. And the person in themselves will either want to uphold themselves to that,
That's right.
or they won't. And if they don't, the organisation will terminate them and will attract more people who want to hold themselves to those values and standards.
So who feels their ethical standards have increased since joining the military, rather than, so when they joined they didn't feel that they had the ethical understanding that they currently have now?
I think they've matured, not, yeah, I think they've matured. I suppose